Waiting for Sarah, Chapter 25, Professional Help. The Christmas holiday in the Lower Mainland was celebrated under another blanket of fog. Mike couldn't remember another year being as bad as this one for fog. He worried about her. Norma asked a lot of questions, most of which he couldn't answer. She thought that they should seek professional help. What do you mean, Norma? I should see a shrink? I'm not sure, Mike, but it wouldn't do any harm to explore the idea. I think you're mad. No, I don't think you're mad, but we can figure this out by ourselves, Mike. We can't figure this out by ourselves, Mike. We need help. He shook his head. Sarah's the one who needs help, not me. He wheeled into his room, but the sound of Norma's radio through the thin door distracted him. 3 teenagers killed in a motor vehicle accident in Surrey. The UN responsibility for failing to prevent the July 1995 massacre of 7,000 Muslims in Srebrenica. On and on. Can you turn that radio down, Norma? He yelled through the door. She turned it off. He stared unseeingly at the mess of clarions piled in the room, thinking only of Sarah, desperate to do something, but not knowing what. Then he had an idea. He could check her home, the address she had given him, the 7th and Ash. What was the number? 2230? That's it. But it was late. He would go in the morning. It wasn't fair. With the new strength of his arms and shoulders, he could make it in about 15 minutes. But the next morning was foggy, and he decided to wait till the afternoon. By the afternoon, the morning fog had lost its brightness to become a damp macema. Visibility was poor. He could no longer wait. He had to go. Saturday was Norma's day for shopping. He took off, pushing himself up the Fairfield slopes vigorously. He was sweating by the time he got there. Sarah's block of ash was lined with mature horse chestnuts, bare, branched, and dense in the shrouded fog. He located 2230, but it was a modern condo. He obliviously had the wrong number. He checked the whole block. They were all condos. There was no house fitting Sarah's description. No big white house with green shutters and a deep front porch. What did it mean? Sarah didn't know her own address, or had she lied to him? It made no sense. His return journey down the hill was easier, but he didn't really notice. Norma wasn't home. He went to his room and closed the door. His mind was spinning. Maybe he was going mad. Nothing made sense. He started going through a bundle of 1980s clarions, staring at them, but not seeing anything. All he could do was hear Sarah kneeling on the door of the archives room, sobbing her heart out. Norma gave Mike a book for Christmas. It was about flying, written by the Battle of Britain pilot. He glanced at the cover and put it away in his room. He thanked Norma and told her that he would read it after Christmas. Chapter 28. Do You Believe? Robbie had telephoned on Friday of Christmas Eve and several times on Christmas Day. Tell Robbie I don't feel like talking, Mike told Norma. But on Sunday morning, Boxing Day, with Vancouver still trapped under a damp fog, Mike felt a bit better. You don't look so good, man, Robbie said, as he pushed Mike along the seawall towards Granville Island. Like you haven't slept in a month. I'm okay. I heard about, Yeah, everyone thinks I'm a psycho. I don't. They wheeled along in silence for a while. Then Robbie said, I've been thinking about it. The girl, Sarah, who is helping you. I can see how everything you say might be true, like Patrick Swayze. Huh? Patrick Swayze. He was in a movie called Ghost, an old flick from 10 years ago, and he died and came back to protect his wife, Demi Moore. Mike stopped in his chair. Who's the crazy one now? What are you saying? Sarah's a ghost? Well, why not? Sarah wasn't a ghost. She was as real as you and me. Anyway, a movie doesn't prove there are ghosts, Robbie. Maybe, but there's this one movie called Mike switched off. It would do no good to tell Robbie about Sarah, torn and bleeding and sobbing. To Robbie, it was like a movie, fiction, just another story. Robbie was like his aunt. He didn't believe Sarah was real. He believed Mike was hallucinating. Thought he was bonkers, thought that he should see a shrink. The trouble with Robbie was that he loved telling plots of old movies, blithely unaware of everyone in the world who didn't care about some of those old movies. He was downright boring sometimes, But Mike never complained about the fear of hurting his feelings. Robbie finally finished explaining the movie's plot, and Mike managed to change the subject. They sat out on the deck at Granville Island, market eating ice cream. Robbie hadn't bought any fries yet, but Mike knew he would as soon as the ice cream was gone. English Bay lay beyond, hidden in the fog. He said, "All those movies about coming back from the death. Do you believe it, Robbie?" "I don't know, Mike. Yes and no. Sometimes I believe, sometimes I don't. I kid myself that my dad will come back one day, either from South America in the bad guys or from the spirit world, but mostly I believe it ain't gonna happen. I'll never meet him, and I'll never find out what he's like." "You're a good friend, Robbie. I don't ever tell you that, do I? I don't know what I'd do without you, and that's the truth." He had meant what he said. He thought of Sarah's painting. Robbie is the one with a big heart, he thought, not me. Mike lay on his bed. The workers were back again on Boxing Day, for crying out loud. What was it with these guys? Were there no flights to the Caribbean on Boxing Day? The noise and drills and hammers rang in his head, and he really began to believe he had gone mad. Chapter 27. The New Millennium. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The long vacation was an undying torment. On the last day of December, the city celebrated the new millennium. It would soon be the year 2000. There were fireworks and music. Norma stayed home, which was what she usually did on New Year's. She said it was dangerous to be outside with the drunken crowds and the fireworks and the traffic and all the carrying on. He went out alone before midnight, pushing himself through the knots and the revelers across the leg and boot square down Bucket Wheel. The sea wall here was mainly cobblestones, and the going was bumpy, with ever-present danger of falling. He stopped at the bench near the marina and looked down at the inlet towards the lights of Granville Bridge. There were no people there. It had been raining earlier, and the ground was still wet. He watched the tugboat pulling a barge loaded with sand towards the Cambry Bridge. Some had to work. Millennium or not, on the opposite side of the inlet, the bright lights of the city, augmented with hundreds of red and green Christmas lights, were like a child's idea of what heaven might look like at night. Did they have a night in heaven, he wondered? Any drawings or paintings he'd ever see showed the heaven in the sunlight, with great fleecy clouds and sunbeams and white-robed angels with golden harps. Fireworks exploded on the Fairview slopes. Rockets rode in the night sky. The first day of January wore another heavy gray cloak of unseasonable fog. It was Y2K, the year 2000. It was supposed to be a techno version of Black Death, but the world hadn't almost come to an end, as many so-called experts had foretold. Computer microchips had somehow managed to slide the digits efficiently and from 1 to 2 in 1999 to 2000. Airplanes failed to fall from the skies. Telephones and electrical grinds did not break down, and civilization did not crumble. Everything, in fact, seems perfectly normal. No doomsday, no melting down, nothing. It was, Mike thought, a little disappointing. He stayed home working half-heartedly on his English essay, due soon after the holiday. The semester had been a hard one. Taking 3 heavies like history, math, and English in the same semester had been tough. Then there were the additional 11th grade work, which was supposed to have been a few makeup units turned into a heavy burden. Reading Macbeth for English and extra work in math and chemistry and physics, not to mention Dorfman's history essay. Teachers saw their own subjects as the most important. Miss reading Macbeth, for example, and your brain would self-destruct. He had kept telling himself that none of it mattered, but ingrained work habits demanded that he do the best he could. In the evening, he watched TV with Norma until the news came on. Norma liked to watch the news, but he didn't. TV news was as bad as radio news, a continuous litany of tragedy and death. Who needed it? He took his English essay and a few clarions from his room. The newspapers were in his lap. The headlines on the front page jumped out at him, and his heart froze. Carleton student, murder victim. Body of missing teenager found. The search for 13-year-old Sarah Francis, missing since the evening of Friday, December 17th, 1982 came to a tragic end the next morning when her body was found in the bushes near Charleston Park and False Creek. The Carleton High 8th grader was reported missing by her parents, John and Frances of 2230 Ash Street, after she failed to return home from a school debating practice. Sarah was the Frances' only child. Her funeral will take place on Thursday at 10 a.m. at St. Augustine's Church. Vancouver Police Department is asking for help in the investigation. Anyone who saw Sarah on Friday evening or who saw anything or anyone suspicious is to contact Vancouver Police immediately. More on page 3. His hands trembled as he examined the date of the newspaper, January 1983, New Year edition. The 13-year-old named Sarah Frances died 17 years ago, murdered. His heart bursting, he turned to page 3. In the center of the picture was Sarah, his Sarah, the Sarah Frances who helped him in the archives room. The picture appeared to be her 7th grade elementary school photograph with a black border around it. She was smiling, and then continued from page 1. All of us at Carleton High, students and faculty, mourn the loss of our brightest and best. 8th grader Sarah Frances' brutal murder has caused a loud scream of anger and grief to be heard throughout the city. Sarah came to Carleton in September from Sanderson Elementary. Teachers there categorized her as a bright and popular student, a gifted pianist and musician, and she was the winner of several trophies for her outstanding performances in music festivals and competitions throughout the lower mainland. Jennifer Galt, her best friend, told the Clarion in a tearful interview, "Sarah was the kindest and most genuine person I had ever met, and I'm going to miss her every day, every hour, for the rest of my life." The Attorney General is calling on the federal government to institute the death penalty for child killers. Sarah, torn and bleeding, sobbing wildly, the image seared in his mind. It was there forever. It could never go away. She had been murdered on Friday, December 17th, 1982. He struggled to recall the date of their last meeting when she was sobbing in the archives room. He remembered it was also Friday, December 17th, the same day and date exactly, except it was 17 years later in 1999. He did not show the newspaper to Norma or to Robbie, but kept the story to himself, saying nothing. Instead, he lay on his bed, staring at Sarah's watercolor pinned to the wall, the one of himself in his chair in the dark, as a dark head in a red heart, and at the clouds of his West Landsander ceiling poster, thinking of Sarah, hearing again the wild sobbing, seeing her thin body in its ripped dress falling through the clouds, falling and falling.